Everybody, welcome to this week's hot take from the Book of Boba Fett, or Book of Luke Skywalker. I don't know what we call it anymore.
Yeah. Well, at least Boba made a cameo in this one.
Yes. Well, I mean, it was a true Book of Boba Fett because he had no lines and he nodded once and he looked menacing. That's basically what Boba Fett did, right? I think that, again, this is episode 6 of Book of Boba Fett.
One more to go.
Apparently, everybody on the internet was crying about this episode. I don't know why. It was whimsical, right? So, before we get into like the chronological and picking up on the things that I've written down about the show, what was your overall take on the episode?
My overall take was it was a really fun hour or whatever it was of Star Wars. Like, it really felt like Star Wars.
Fair.
Similar to the last one where it felt like, you had elements from Clone Wars, elements from the prequels, all that sort of stuff. It was great fan service. It did kind of feel like, did we need all of these people in this one episode, or could we have, maybe spread this out a little bit more? But I mean, I don't really want to complain about having too much of a good thing, but it was just kind of like,
I'm going to complain.
Okay. I think it was just like great cameo after great cameo. I was like, all right, this is cool. But yeah, I also think they could have spread it out maybe a little bit more.
I'm going to complain a lot about this episode. Let me get me wrong. I loved every single second of it. I mean, like, give me all the after the prequels, after the sequels, give me all the awesome fan service that you can shove at me. I'll take it because it was great. But on I once I get kind of clear away and I kind of start thinking about it, I'm like, I start questioning things. Mm-hmm. From like a stylistic point of view and some other stuff. And first of all, Asohka did not need to be in a nice glass, by the way.
Thank you.
Asohka did not need to be in this episode whatsoever. It was very confusing, right? Because we've been the Star Wars fandom has been wondering. Okay, Asohka knew Anakin, and then she disappeared for the original trilogy, right? Because obviously she wasn't invented by that. And then she was not even in the sequel trilogy because who knows where she was at that time, 30 years from what we're seeing right now.
Yeah, other than supposedly her voice was one that Rey could hear at the end, which made people think that she had died, but who knows?
Blah, 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 blah. Who knows? She was in Rebels, so she's been around right before the OT, right? So we're like, okay, here's one person who knows Darth Vader the most, right? And she's nowhere to be found. So people have been waiting for the discussion of Ahsoka with Luke, Ahsoka with Rey, Leia, and all this other stuff. But we get robbed of that moment, which really irritated me. I'm like, oh, we see Ahsoka. Maybe she was following Mando, and they're both arriving to see Luke at the same time. It just happens. Nope. They've been chatting for a while. Luke's great. He's going to train Grogu fine. He's good. Yeah. And then we get that little throwaway line, which we'll mention later, is like, you're so much like your father, or whatever it was. I wrote, so much like your father. I quoted it in my notes here. So I think one that was unnecessary because it robs a really cool like meeting for the first time.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that we won't see it, but now it's going to be cheapened out, or we'll just get more stupid flashbacks in the Ahsoka show, right?
When Ahsoka goes in the back to tank.
What I'm really curious is, what does this mean for the Star Wars story as a whole, right? And actually, we're going to hold that to the end, our predictions for what happens later. But like all this stuff is just, it's a little bit too much. And Filoni cannot, because he wrote this one, I believe. Yep. He cannot. What's the word I'm looking for? He cannot help himself by adding in all the Clone Wars characters he can into this Mandoverse, right? He threw Ahsoka in there, and she works perfectly fine. Because it's only been 10 years since, or 13 years ish since Rebels, right? 5 years plus 5 years plus, was it 3-ish years from the original trilogy, somewhere around there? I don't know what exactly is.
Yeah. So we're like 5 years after Return of the Jedi, so that was 3 years. Yeah, so we're about 8 years maybe after.
Well, 8 years. Well, wasn't Rebels 5 years before A New Hope?
Oh, was it that long? Okay, so yeah, so maybe it's more than that.
Right,
okay.
Something like that, right? Anyway, doesn't make a difference. We have what's his name? Now I can't remember his name. I wrote him down off the top of my head. You have
we had Cad Vance at the beginning.
Yep, and then you had Cad Bane. Excuse me. Yeah. Yes, he threw. I mean, granted, that was an awesome scene. Like, but like, all right, we just threw another old Clone Wars character in there. He just can't help himself. Just like he wants to bring all the Clone Wars and cartoon shows to real life, which was I mean it's fine, but again we get into that problem is all these awesome shows are sandwiched in between things that we already know what happened, right?
Yeah,
and that's the downfall of Star Wars, and we'll talk about that towards the end of the show. Okay, so you open up with Con Vanth. I thought that was a really cool scene. And you know he's fighting the Pikes. He throws away the spice, so you know he's not a greedy person. He's a man of morals and upstanding value. And then right after the credits, Mando is going searching for Grogu, and we land, and we're like, oh, it's R2, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. Have you watched on Twitter where people are saying that they were just like bawling the whole time? Is it just the Luke's music and just him being on screen?
I guess some of that. I didn't really actually see so much crying. Maybe you just saw different ones. I just saw people flipping out, and probably from Cad Bane more than anything.
Okay,
that's somebody.
I didn't watch anything, so
yeah.
I'm just reading people's reactions on Discord. Like everybody's freaking out. I'm like, okay. So Mando finds little ant droids building a stone hut. I thought that was kind of awesome.
Yeah, well, I thought that was a fun little play thing because you see the rock rising up, and I don't know. My first thought was that was either Luke or Grogu using the Force to raise.
Oh
the rock.
yes, that did cross my mind.
And then you see the spider bot come and building the, I guess what's going to be the new Jedi Academy on Yavin 4.
What I really liked was the fact that this is how I think robots should be used. All the manual labor, right? I'm like, that's pretty cool. Skywalker got a bunch of grants from the New Republic to buy all these droids for himself. I liked how Din Djarin says hello friend to R2. Like he's not like disparaging against droids. That kind of stood out.
He's come a long way.
Yes.
With those.
I liked the line, is this a bench? Like they were just like somehow Luke was communicating. I don't know, R2 was or whatever, so he's chilling out. And then you get the whole scene with Grogu, and I'm just going to lump the whole Skywalker stuff. Skywalker looked phenomenal.
Yes. Well, that's one thing a lot of people are talking about, because I guess after last season of Mando 2, I guess there was somebody who took it upon themselves to do the deep fake better, and then he made Luke look better than what was in there. And so Lucasfilm just hired that guy.
Oh, well.
So it was like a fan-made thing, and they hired him, and I guess they used him, and it came out a lot better than I think at the end.
The only nitpick is his dialogue is very slow when he talks. He doesn't talk like a normal person. He talks very measured. It just stood out. That's the only thing that stood out. So I had no problem with any of the Luke scenes. Nothing really stood out to me. It was just a normal like Jedi training thing. Grogu bouncing around eventually from rock to rock, doing some of his force jumps and stuff like that. That was pretty neat. I liked when Luke tried to force him to remember Order 66 when he was from home. Now, I'm trying to remember, were the majority of the clone troopers from the Clone Wars or Attack of the Clones, were they CGI for the most part? Because they look different in the flashback from what I remember.
I think it was a combination of live actors and CGI. Like obviously when there were a lot of them, it was a lot of CGI. But if there was only a few, it was live actors. Because
my first reaction is, we've never seen clone troopers in live action before. And then I'm like, that can't be possible because there was a movie with them. So I wasn't sure. But like, I thought they looked really cool in that scene. That was pretty awesome. And then Asohka shows up and talk to Mando.
But just to be clear, I know it's like I can't get everything all at once because I was just complaining that we got too much in this scene. But we don't actually know exactly what happened to Grogu. Like he was hiding, but they killed the Jedi protecting him, and then they seemed to go for him, and then his dream stopped. So did they capture him? Did somebody come and save him? Like, but
true.
I'm assuming we'll find that out.
Maybe we'll find out. We see Asohka, and she does her little song and dance. It's the whole Jedi can't have any kind of attachments type of thing. Mando's like, I really want to see him. Please give him this present, etc., etc. And then we get a nice training session with Luke. He's sitting in the backpack again, kind of reminiscent of Yoda from Empire. That was kind of neat. We did get the note that this would be his first student. Right? Yes. If he were to stay, it'd be number one.
Clear, I believe they said this would be the Academy's first student, which they were building, because technically prior to this he would have trained Leia. But then Leia decided to...
Would that have happened at this time? Or would that happen after?
My understanding is it happened before this. Like he was training her kind of right after Jedi.
Okay, fair enough.
But then she had that vision of her her son turning or whatever. So then she pulled away from the Force.
So we got Mando's, kind of hanging out. Okay, doesn't get to see him. He turns around. He basically shows that he cares, right? Because he's like, I'm not going to interfere with his training.
Best for him.
Yep.
Yeah.
So he's not
a good
selfish.
dad.
Absolutely. So just to kind of encapsulate the whole Luke thing from a sentiment point of view, it's really cool that we see him and we see Grogu, but we didn't need 10 to 20 minutes or whatever, however length it was, 15 minutes of that time. It was great seeing it, but it adds nothing to the story. Other than
it's very little to Boba Fett, right?
Well,
like it was very strange.
We're going to ignore that it's actually. We're just going to say Star Wars TV show,
okay,
right?
Yeah,
I mean,
fair enough.
what's the point, right? At this point, so, but it adds nothing to the overall story arc of the Mando universe.
No, not the Mando universe.
Nice.
I think it kind of tries to fill in those gaps. And we had, on Discord a conversation about, it feels like Luke is just repeating the mistakes of the past Jedi with the whole, not having any attachments or anything. Like maybe that's what.
But he doesn't know best though, because he doesn't know the past Jedi, right? Like he only has it when all the Jedi are dead, and Yoda's the last.
And we don't really know where, because we know at this time he's been gathering Jedi artifacts and books and stuff like that. But we don't really know where he is at that journey. So we don't know how much he knows. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's taking.
I think he's probably just trying his best, right?
Well, yes. Well, I mean, he did learn from Yoda that.
But for who knows for how long and stuff. Like we just don't know. It's not like he went to Jedi college for 4 years.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like Yoda told him in Empire, like, don't go save your friends. You have to stay in.
Yeah.
And then I guess he learned from that experience, like that whole thing. So I'll give him that. And I can't really put the mistakes of the previous Jedi on his plate. Ahsoka could certainly teach him about the mistakes of the previous Jedi. So who knows if they've had the conversation? Probably not.
I mean, and maybe he did. I mean, maybe they have, and they said what led to your father's fall was his like attachment to wanting to save Padma, and stuff
that's
like
why
that. So
we should have had that meeting. Yeah, right. That could have been a whole episode, but I guess we don't get that. What I really picked up on was just Luke's theme song throughout this whole episode, and that was wonderful. It was like, that's classic Star Wars music. It made me smile. I get why people get all teary-eyed and stuff like that, because it's great music, and it has great memories and nostalgia attached to it. I mean, this is Disney after all, right?
I was going to say, it's like you always talk about here in the sounds when you're walking through the Magic Kingdom. It's kind of the same thing, right?
So I said this in the open. I think we're going to get a flashback in Ahsoka's show, because we don't know where that picks up, right? That could start like right after Rebels and carry on, and then like one episode is her meeting up with Luke. So we might go back in time to go forward in time, if that makes sense. We don't because we don't know anything about the show other than we got a little bit of her in season 2, Mando. We got her here in Boba Fett. So we don't know if it's going to be continuation, because apparently they like to go back and forth and fill in the blanks with these shows. So we'll see. Okay, so we flash back. Mando's back on Tatooine. Well, Mando heads back to Tatooine and then shows up with Vanth again, and there's a cowboy walking down. Like, I don't know why he just didn't why he had to walk that far into town. Why he could just drive up.
It was literally for that cool shot.
Absolutely. I mean, I would do the same thing.
Yeah.
But these are the questions I ask myself when I'm seeing this. And I think somebody in Discord had cut out the shot of the artist rendition of it that happened in the whatever. I'm like, I would love to have that frame. That's a really badass shot. Anyway, if we come back and I'm wondering, who's that cowboy? Then I'm like, no, it couldn't be, right? Because I had just finished watching the Clone Wars, and then it's freaking Cad Bane. He looks amazing. Like, some people didn't like his costume or his look.
I thought it looked amazing, and I agree with some other people that have heard. He looks like more evil, or like, I don't know if it's just like because we got such a close up of his like sharpened teeth or whatever.
Well, I mean, it's more detailed than a cartoon, though, right?
Yeah, like in the cartoon, like not that he didn't seem dangerous or whatever, but he seemed really like I don't want to mess with this guy.
Well, I mean, like in Darth Maul in the cartoons looked like a cartoon of Darth Maul, right? He didn't look sinister and scary like he can do in live
That's
action.
A good comparison. Yeah. Similar.
So I like the glow of his eyes. I love, you could see the wrinkles around, his face type of thing. I thought that was really cool. What I really what I was thinking is like, okay, so there's a standoff between Vanth and Cad, and we're like, okay, who's going to win this? Like, because we just had these, like, he could draw, right? He drew on the pike. And
he took out the 3 pikes real quick.
So I'm like, okay, but this stupid deputy comes out, wasn't listening, and then he got shot. I want to go on record. I think everybody else is going to go on record that obviously he's not dead because they were tending to him afterwards. I think, was it you that had the point of now Vanth is going to get his own armor or something else like that?
No, it wasn't me. Somebody else said that about getting his own armor, though, and because he obviously used to have Boba Fett's armor. So
I think we're gonna see more of him. Obviously, him and Cat have to show off again. That's in the cards at this point. Whether it's gonna be next week or in the future at some point.
And I'm assuming Boba and Cad Bane will meet because that's kind of what everyone's been waiting for. Because supposedly in the past it was in a never released video game that Cad Bane's the one who shot Boba in the head and gave him the dent in his helmet.
Okay.
So
that's a Filoni thing to do. Yes. Yeah. I get that.
So definitely Filoni's going to want to get that in live action. So everyone's waiting for that meeting.
Because he did say like Boba Fett is a hardened criminal killer guy that worked for the Empire. And Cad Bane looks like a killer that worked for the Empire, right? Like he's a sinister looking dude. Which stands out completely from Boba Fett, who's nothing looking like a sinister. He's just like an angry old man that's like running around in the desert, right?
Yeah, get off my lawn.
Right. There's no badassery when it comes to Boba Fett in the Book of Boba Fett at this point.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate. So maybe we'll get some one-on-one time between the two of them. Okay, so we get shots. It's shot back to the town, Mos Espa. And boom goes the casino or the bar or whatever you want to call it. I forget the name of it.
It was like not the Oasis. It's something like that, though.
Right. So is your namesake dead at this point? Was he playing that day?
So he was not shown.
Okay, good.
So there is still a chance that the Max Rebo is still alive. I heard some joking that he was late to the gig and he's like pulling up, dragging his keyboard, and it's like, oh God, okay. Well, glad I was late. I was hungover this morning. I didn't make it in on time.
So that was basically the last scene when it came to Boba Fett, because was it the scene where they showed them talking to Fett's crew with like the thing?
So that was before Din went. Yeah, that was before, and that was before the duel with Cad Bane. So that was because Din then went to Freetown to try to recruit them and stuff like that. Yeah,
I did not write that in the notes because it was rather boring, that whole sequence.
Yeah, it was kind of a quick. It was kind of like, oh, here's Boba. Like, oh, I know, guys, and like that was it. It was like, okay.
So we know things are going to get real. We're going to conclude something of the Book of Boba Fett next episode, and then we go back to Luke and Grogu, and Luke gives Grogu the decision of take the chainmail or take Yoda's lightsaber, which I thought was kind of cool. But, like, why can't Grogu make his own lightsaber when he's worthy of it? Like, he barely knows how to – he just learned how to jump. You're going to give him a lightsaber at this point? So, I predict that he's going to pick the chainmail because Luke was wondering, does he really have his heart into it, right?
Yeah.
So, I think that's some foreshadowing. What do you think?
I think if he does pick one, it will be the chainmail. But I don't think that means he's going to cut himself off from the Force. I think he's just going to find his own way. Because one thing I did find interesting was I assume at this point Din still has the Darksaber, and he didn't like show it to Asohka or like, by the way, I have my own lightsaber type thing.
I don't think he's going to be bringing that thing out when there's Jedi around either.
Yeah, I don't. But like the Darksaber was made by Tar Vizsla, who was a Jedi Mandalorian. So why can't Grogu I'll be a Jedi Mandalorian? Like, why can't I do both?
I think it's a little big for him though. No, don't you think? Like the hilt's like half his size.
That's why he's got to use the Force.
Okay, so overall, nothing really happened. We just got a lot of we got a little Grogu training because every Jedi or Force user has to go through a training montage. We've got the setup for next week's episode with the Pikes, a little bit of fighting, little Cad Bane and Vanth coming by. I don't like saying Vanth. I should just say Cobb. I'm going to go with just
Cobb Vanth. Cobb Vanth of Vanth Refrigeration.
Yes. So, okay. So here's what I'm worried about with where is the Mandoverse going. We talked about this in Discord quite a bit.
Yeah.
So my predictions don't really change from last year. We're going to see the coming together, the restoration of Mandalore, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And we want to like. I have a problem with timeline, even though Star Wars timeline's all mucked up anyway.
Yeah.
So you have Mandalore, and if it's just like the story of fighting Mandalore and then like pushing back like local Empire remnants or whatever, like Moff Gideon, and then restored Mandalore fight, and that's the big fight in season 4 of Mandalorian or whatever, right?
Yeah.
That would be cool. And I'm okay with that. That fits nice and tidy within the region of space, and it doesn't really impact the galaxy overall. But my issue is you've got Ahsoka, who's searching for Thrawn and Ezra, right? That's her life quest for the last, I don't know, 10 years, or call it that, right? That's how you can hand wave why she wasn't around for the actual fight where she was helping the rebellion, early on. Why wasn't she helping them throughout? So maybe she was searching, and that's why we could say, oh, she was wherever.
Yeah,
right?
maybe she was trapped somewhere in the unknown regions or whatever.
Who knows? So we're going to get that story, where she's been all this time, because that's what people are asking. And then I don't think you could bring Thrawn back between the OT and the sequels. It's just too much.
Yep.
It doesn't work. And we were talking about this, right? You were kind of
Yeah.
pitching some things. Here's the reason. Thrawn is a massive bad guy, right? He is trilogy worthy kind of villain, or 10 movies MCU. Like, he's the equivalent of Thanos, right? Like,
Yep.
he's that level boss man, right? Because everybody loves him. He's super smart, that sort of thing. And prior to Jedi, he was off wherever, his story is basically he was checking out the Empire and see if they were a threat to the Chiss. This Chiss is some mysterious race, and they've got their own thing going. You've got Ahsoka, and I don't know how long her kind lives for, so maybe she can live 200 years or something, and she'll be alive post-sequels. Maybe Disney hand waves away the sequels. I don't know.
Yeah.
It just, the timelines don't really match up with her being, maybe she helps them restore Mandalore. That's kind of her thing. But the Thrawn storyline does not work out because of the sequels are looming, right?
Yeah. The only way I could try to make it work out is we've kind of talked about this before. It's just like, what section of the galaxy was the sequel trilogy taking place in? And that could be separate from where the whole Mandalore and Chiss everything takes place. So they could almost take place at the same time. And so you're not really retconning the sequels. You're just kind of saying, well, there's this other thing going on.
Because the whole premise of the terrible world building of the sequels is the New Republic doesn't want to give out funds to Leia, or they don't believe that the remnants of the First Order, this kind of secret like thing somewhere tucked away somewhere, is a threat, right?
Right.
And so she takes resistance and goes off with some special funding to go fight them. Now, if you wanted to actually have that storyline, as terrible as it is, you could say that they didn't want to give her funds because they're worried about some Chiss invasion on the other side of the galaxy, and that's why they weren't focused on the First Order. They were focused on Thrawn. But that didn't happen. If he was this big threat, that it would have been mentioned in some way, or that they just defeated them. It would have been in the crawl in the first, like New Republic after. Like, why would they mention this big battle? And they should have made that movie instead, right? Because that would have been more entertaining.
I know. Like I said, I'm trying to figure out.
I know you were trying to figure out what Star Wars is thinking. It just, to me, it just doesn't fit together. I get the sense that Disney will never retcon the sequels, because why would they retcon $4 or $5 billion worth of entertainment? It just doesn't make sense from a business point of view. So what they're using these shows to do is to build up the backstory and the world building, and basically surround these three turds that got put on screen to kind of make them make sense, right? They're giving Luke all the backstory and screen time that everybody wanted him to have in the prequels or the sequels, right? So they're saving that character from disdain.
Yes.
They could easily wrap the sequels around and have the Thrawn story happen after the sequels, because then you could start getting like that was all their plan all along, right? It was they're the ones.
Although I did look up, because I was wondering before how long the Chiss actually only lived to be about 80.
Okay, well,
So
then that's a terrible
so I don't
story.
think that. Yeah, so I don't think that's going to work.
No. Unfortunately not. But so I don't know. I don't. What do you do with Thrawn then? Like, do you use
I mean,
Thrawn?
maybe he's just not Thanos. Maybe he's, the Loki, or I don't know what the right level thing is, but where it's it kind of, there's pieces of it in all these series, and it builds up to a movie. Because I know a lot of people are pointing to, I guess it's not December 2023. There's an untitled Star Wars movie on the calendar, so maybe that's what all this is building to. And it's like, it's not an Infinity War Endgame type thing, but it's maybe the equivalent of like the first Avengers movie where they went up against like a Loki, not Thanos. I don't know.
Could they use Thrawn's character as a lead into a bigger, badder, kind
That's
of empire?
I mean, I guess
thing?
that's what I think it would be, and then that's kind of hanging over, and that war, for lack of a better word, takes place after the sequels,
Right, because Loki was a super powerful bad guy, and he had an Infinity Stone, but he was just holding it for Thanos for a while,
Exactly.
right? Type of thing. It's a good way of putting it. That's just be a terrible waste of an awesome character, though. That's the only thing that just makes me cringe.
But I think they could give him enough. I mean, that you're basically doing 2 years worth of building up to this moment. That's still a lot for a character. I get what you're saying. Like, he's a great character, but it's not like they're just throwing him in. Like, we're meeting him in one movie and then he's dead in that same movie. They're still using more than that. But
yes, but like, if the sequels were just basically Timothy Zahn's books from 20 years ago,
right.
Like he would have had. That's an epic storyline. I mean, like that's a massive event, right? Like to have one movie with him and maybe some build up on some Disney Plus shows, it just does that whole character disservice. I think from the lore, that's whatever, right? Can you do it? Yes, and whatever it be, it'll be a fun ride.
And I think he has been fairly fleshed out in a lot of the books, like the Thrawn Ascendancy books and stuff like that. So, I think it's more continuing him versus like retelling it. But
right, no, I get it. If all the material of any of the material that they have, that's like the perfect one that's like perfectly adapted for the screen, but they'll never have it because obviously the timelines don't match up and all that nonsense. Okay, did I forget anything on this episode that really nothing happened in, but that was all very exciting?
Yes. No, I think you got everything that I was thinking of. I mean, the music was a big thing. I think we do hear Yoda's theme at some point.
I didn't catch that. Okay.
But I think it's it'll just be really interesting to see where they go. The only other thing that kind of came to my mind was leading into this episode, we're like, oh no, we'll probably see like when Mando went to see Grogu is like episode 1 of like Mando season 3, or if they showed it, it'll just be like a really quick thing. We're not going to, like maybe Luke and Grogu will be like just a quick scene. It was like half the episode. So
well, no, I mean, you were saying
like
that last week.
It's like everything we think we're going to get a little of. Filoni's like, no. And then have whipped cream and a cherry on top of it.
I fully believe that we were going to go see Grogu and everything this episode because there's no 2 episodes. There's no hour and a half worth of material for fighting the Pikes. Now going to next week, predictions for next week. It's just going to escalate with the Pikes. It's going to be 40 minutes. Are we going to get a full 40 minutes of just Fett's crew and Mando fighting Pikes in Mos Espa?
It seems what they built to in these Mando seasons. The last one's just like, the prior to that is building up the team, and then the last one is their kind of assault. They usually they're not slow getting into it in the final season.
So they're just going to go. So what? I mean, my prediction is Boba Fett's going to go with Mando. Everything is going to get blown up. He's not going to want to be a crime lord anymore because it was just too hard. He was never meant for it, and that could be the only ending because he's been so incompetent this whole time being a crime lord. Or maybe not incompetent. Maybe I'm being a bit too harsh, but very naive about where he needs to be.
And as much as he wanted to, like, he's like he told Fennec, like, they're the idiots. Like, I want to be the one in charge of my life and stuff like that. I don't know if he really wanted to be a crime boss. That just kind of was the means to do that.
That's what he fell into.
The big thing was wanting his own tribe and like not just working for somebody else. So I think he would be okay if he kind of like settles things on Tatooine or whatever, and it's kind of like, all right, I took care of this. Now I can go with Boba or Bo-Katan or whatever it is, and let's go back to Mandalore or whatever it is.
So
I definitely could see it not like the season ends not with him on the throne. In Jabba's palace.
Basically, season 3 is if these are all books, right? We're talking about books. We had Mando season 1, which is book 1. Mando season 2, which is book 2. And then this is just basically the prologue to Mando season 3. That's basically what it is, right? Because going forward, we can't. I find it very hard to believe that we're just going to leave Boba Fett as a local crime lord of one town on Tatooine somewhere, and that's what he's going to spend the rest of his life on, right?
Yeah.
That would be silly. So I would be very surprised if you don't see him following Mando off somewhere. Maybe he doesn't leave at the end of next week's episode. Maybe there's a hidden episode 8 somewhere that we don't know about, which is doubtful. But we'll see him, I think, in Mandalorian season 3 with something.
Yeah, I think so.
Do any characters die next week?
Usually somebody does, and I'm wondering what happens with Fennec.
I was going to say she's the one person that you can get rid of.
The other thing I was thinking was that he leaves her in charge. Because
she's the competent person, right?
Yeah, exactly. So maybe they kind of win, but he's like, this isn't for me, and leaves her in charge. Like, so it's still kind of his domain or whatever, but she's kind of doing the day-to-day stuff.
I like that. I didn't think about that. Because when Fennec was walking around there telling everybody what to do, we got this muscle. The whispers are saying here, here, here. So she's got her own spy network. She knows. And she's ruthless enough to be a crime lord. Boba Fett's been kind of just a brute and kind of, I want to rule with respect and not blah, 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 blah. So Fennec might be... Because Fennec followed Boba Fett because she loved the message of running her own thing, right? She bought into his
and
idea,
she also
right?
kind of, she bought into it and like had this whole life debt thing and didn't necessarily have anywhere to go. So yeah, I think, but like, she's definitely like committed to him, but it's not. I don't think she's as into the whole like Mandalore stuff. So.
Oh no, she would never follow him on that quest.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So this is a good way of and then they could be friends. Like if anything they need anything in the crime world, she's like the way in. I don't know, whatever happens in the future Mandalorian. Does Boba Fett get shot in any way and permanently injured or dead or whatever?
You know what? Even just die, I don't. It's not 100%. I'm trying to decide if I think it's even 50-50. But I mean, that would be the end chapter of the Book of Boba Fett, right? This isn't the Book of Boba Fett part 1. At least it hasn't been labeled of. It's the Book of Boba Fett. So, but maybe it's just closing this kind of chapter of. But I think there's at least I'll go 33% chance he dies.
I mean, that's a good number. I mean, I think there's a distinct good chance. I guess 30%, 33% is a good number of anything. Do we see, I would imagine Fennec stays. Do we see Boba Fett riding on his pet Rancor? I'm assuming that has to happen.
We have
right?
to. They couldn't have mentioned it without it happening.
So we'll see that. And then I always mess up the Wookiee's name, Chrysanthemum.
Black Chrysanthemum.
Does he become part of Boba Fett's posse, or does he stay back? If Fennec does take over, is he with Fennec, or?
I think I could see that happening because again, I don't think he would care about freeing Mandalore or whatever like that.
No,
so.
He likes the world of crime and beating people up. So I could see him becoming Fennec's like enforcer, number 2 dude type of thing. I really hope Boba Fett goes off and restored. That would be that's we want to see. I want to see Boba Fett and his rocket pack and his weapons fighting stormtroopers, not like a gang of pikes in the street. Like that's just, I don't know. It just doesn't seem right at all. But we'll find out in a week. Yeah, and then we'll go from there. Did I leave anything else out, Phil?
No, I can't think of anything. So. I think that's as good a spot to end as there is.
I mean, I could go on and on, as we usually do, about the future of Star Wars. But we'll see. Let's see what level they bring it to. We won't really know until next year after Mandalorian Season 3. So do we get a hint of what Season 3 is going to be about?
That's a good question. Do we get a post-credit scene?
Did we ever get post-credit scenes in Mandalorian?
We did. The end of season 2, the post-credit scene was the Book of Boba Fett. So.
That's true. So I guess we will get a hint. What would be the hint, you think? If they're going to do the whole Mandalorian or restoring of Mandalore, what can they have, like a little 5-second, like him walking into something or coming off of a ship or whatever?
Coming off with a ship with the Darksaber, or maybe they tease Sabine. I don't know, something like that.
I'm looking forward to it. Yep. All right, this has been the longest Book of Boba Fett show. I think it's 30. We're about 30 minutes in, a little over. So that's good. We're going to be back on Sunday as our weekly show. When do you go away on your vacation? That's 2 weeks.
So we leave. Yeah. So we leave the 18th.
That's right. Yours right around the same day that I was supposed to go away. Okay, very good. So this Sunday, and then we'll figure out in a couple of weeks.
Schedule after that. Yep.
All right, guys. Have a good night, and we'll talk to you next time.
Take care.